Hi, I'm Chef Shelly Meyer and you're watching Shelly's Game Kitchen. I'm a 10-year former restaurateur and caterer, and now I've turned personal and private chef in the beautiful Bitterroot Valley of Montana. I love cooking wild game, but I also cook farmed game for my clients. A lot of my private chef clients want to enjoy game meat, and so I source that online. There's many. If you want to do an internet search, you can find some game meat really easily through several different resources. So what I'm going to do today is actually wild elk. We're going to do the backstrap, and in the beef world it would be considered the ribeye, but it looks completely different because there's very lean protein, so there's not any of the marbling and fat like you'll see on a ribeye, which, don't get me wrong, I love a good fatty ribeye, but sometimes you want to just be a little bit more lean, and the game meat is healthier than even poultry, turkey, all of those white meats. Game meat is healthier. It's lower in cholesterol and leaner protein, and actually has some omega-3 fatty acids. We're also going to pair that marinated backstrap with my cauliflower parsnip puree and some asparagus spears with some lemon zest. And all throughout we're going to use some really special spices. So stay tuned to learn more about that. So what we're going to do today is make some croutons with my Chef Shelly herb seasoning from Montana Flavor to Savor. We're going to be making a strawberry spinach salad with a vinaigrette, and then these croutons are going to go on top of that and just really pop off of that vinaigrette. So this is super simple, but my clients absolutely love my croutons. They literally, I have to make croutons for them even when I'm not doing a salad, just so they have snacks of my croutons. So they absolutely love it. Just toss with some olive oil and some of my herb seasoning. We're just going to try and get that coated on each side. These are a little big on the crouton size, so you can actually dice that down into a smaller crouton if you want. Whatever pleases your palate. But we're going to get them nice and toasty. It'll really be nice with that strawberry and spinach. I've done other things instead of the croutons. Instead of bread, you can do nuts. I've caramelized almonds for this, especially for gluten-free people. And all of our spices are gluten-free, completely all natural, no preservatives, so they can go with anything. So now we're going to put these on the sheet pan and get those in the oven and toast them off at 350 degrees for about 10 minutes. Test one. If it's not crunchy enough, leave them in for a couple more minutes. So what we're making now is our strawberry spinach salad with a very easy vinaigrette. Vinaigrettes are so simple because it's a ratio. You can make a vinaigrette out of anything as long as you have your ratio right. I like a little bit more acid level in my vinaigrettes, so I'm a 1 to 3, 1 part acid to 3 parts olive oil. So here we're going to do a 1/4 cup to a 3/4 cup of oil. You can do this really simple in a mason jar and just put the lid on and shake it away. But if you don't have that on hand, you can whisk it. One of the other things is a pinch of salt and pepper in everything. That's going to be one of your secrets in a vinaigrette. This one, I have a little brown sugar as the sweetener. You can use honey. Maple syrup makes a great vinaigrette too. And we're just going to do a dash of Worcestershire in this, just to add that little umami flavor. And here I've got some smoked paprika. This is one of my secret ingredients. I love the smoke. You can really smell that rather than the regular paprika. So that works really well in this. I'm going to add some brown sugar to mine. That is our timer going off for our croutons. 10 minutes are up, so I'm just going to take a little peek. They are not quite done, so we're gonna give them a couple more minutes. But now I'm gonna add my brown sugar. Like I said, you can do honey, whatever. This will actually help emulsify your dressing. And I'm gonna do a little bit more fresh cracked pepper. That's what I like in a finishing. You can do pre-ground when you're cooking, but when I'm finishing, I like a little pop of that fresh cracked. And then we've got our spinach here. This has already been triple washed, organic spinach. On some of those bigger pieces, I like to take off the stems. And it's more for plating reasons. They're perfectly edible. I just like how it plates a little bit nicer without some of those great big leaves, or the stems on those big leaves. And then I like to add just a little bit of the dressing. And then we're gonna have our sliced strawberries and add some wonderful blue cheese. So tossing with just a little bit of the dressing helps when you add your other ingredients. And I just got some nice diced red onion. It's wonderful, little pop in there, makes it a little bit spicier, but I love it. You can omit the onion or you can use sweet onion. Very simple to put this together. And now I've got blue cheese crumbles. Who doesn't like blue cheese crumbles? I'm gonna toss that in there all together. And then when we plate, we'll add those sliced strawberries to the top so they don't get lost. But I'm gonna add just a little bit more of that vinaigrette. Toss that so that can get ready to plate. So now we're gonna plate our beautiful strawberry spinach salad. Just get a nice little white bowl here. Get some beautiful greens in there. That always happens in a kitchen. There's always a loose buy. Then I like to top dress with just a little bit so you know what's inside. Whenever you're in a kitchen or a commercial kitchen, you always need to know what is inside each thing. So for allergies, for all kinds of reasons. So top dress, and then I like to do my little thin sliced strawberries I have here. Top dress around, and then I'm gonna add just a little drizzle more of that vinaigrette. Stir that up a little bit, just so we've got some on those wonderful strawberries. And then of course, croutons are coming out of the oven. There we go. Nice. So what we do with that then, I'm just gonna grab a few of those hot little babies and put those around the edge. Clean that plate up. And there you have my strawberry spinach salad, blue cheese crumbles, and a nice vinaigrette, herb croutons. So now I'm going to put together my blackberry crisp. This is one of my restaurant's secret recipes I'm going to share with you. So stick with me while we make this blackberry crisp. The first thing we need to do is kind of get our flour and our butter, and we want to cut those two things together so we get a crumbly topping. So I'm just going to add my flour and then my diced up. I did just a really small kind of diced up. It just helps it to be able to cut that into the flour to make your topping. And you can use a pastry cutter or a fork, whatever is going to be the easiest for you, whatever you've got on hand. If you don't have a pastry cutter, fork works just fine. We're just going to kind of press that in there, get a nice topping. I'm going to add some seasonings. Now to the topping, I'm just going to add some cinnamon and then some brown sugar. And this is a 1/4 cup packed brown sugar. And there is a difference between packed and loose. In some ingredients, you don't want to have it packed because you don't need to have the sweetness, but maybe you want that little molassy flavor that you get with brown sugar over white sugar. And that's kind of why I use brown sugar a lot. I use it in my apple pies, and obviously I use, earlier, I used it in my vinaigrette. So now that we've got that kind of cut in, you can add in your oats. And if you don't quite get the fork, it's perfectly fine to get in there and get your crumb made with your hands. Just make sure they're clean. Usually in the restaurant kitchen, we are washing our hands constantly. So we're very used to always having clean hands. So in there you can kind of see I've got my topping ready. I'm just going to pour it into this bowl here to make it easier. So I'm going to set that aside, and then we're going to get to our berries. Clean up a little bit. Now this is a berry crisp, and you can use any kinds of berries. A lot of times I use 3 different kinds of berries. Today I'm using blackberries and strawberries, just because it kind of comes along with the first course that I did with the strawberry spinach salad. So if you're kind of tying things in, the whole meal flows together really nice. So what I've got here is I've just got some blackberries, and I'm going to just kind of give them a quarter chop, cut them in half. And then I like to keep a couple whole, and I'm going to do that, keep a couple of those whole for when you're plating. It looks nice to see everything that's inside. I'll do the same thing with just a couple of pieces of the strawberry. So I'm going to hold that aside, and then I've also got some halved blackberries, which again, as you can see, they just look so much nicer when you cut them in half. They're wonderful for plating. So I'm going to do that, and sometimes we eat with our eyes first, so it's nice to think about those plating things. So now I am going to mix my blackberries and my strawberries together. So we're just going to kind of toss our berries in here so it makes it easier to blend with our other ingredients. Now, because they're going to kind of macerate and get a nice, wonderful jus going when they're baked. But to help that be a little bit thicker and not quite so runny, you need a little thickening power, and I like to use just regular old AP. And we're just going to toss that AP flour with our berries. And then here comes my secret. So cinnamon, of course. Chinese 5-spice. It just adds that extra layering when you've got all of these berries. It really plays off of the acid of the berries. And so I'm just going to dust that all in there. I love that the Chinese 5-spice in this particular recipe is just wonderful. And again, we've got some more brown sugar. And what I do a lot of times is I'll taste my fruit before and see, okay, how ripe are they? How much help do they need with the sugar? If they don't need that much help, then don't do a packed cup, or quarter cup in this case. You can just do unpacked, or just do a little bit, 2 tablespoons instead of 4 tablespoons in a quarter cup. I also, in berries or any kind of fruit, you want to have a little extra flavor and something that's going to hit your palate. Lemon zest is wonderful. I'm just going to use a pinch of lemon zest in here, and then a little bit more. Put that aside, and then here comes the wonderful ingredient, blackberry brandy. So you need just a little bit of liquid. Again, we put that flour in there, so what's it got to thicken? Liquid. So blackberry brandy is one of those ingredients that has, it's not just brandy, it kind of goes along with the berries that we've got. I've used Chambord, which is a raspberry liqueur. You can use pretty much anything. Grand Marnier would be wonderful, something like that. Now, I've got a little ramekin here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to toss my dressed berries, pour them into my ramekin. And they will settle as they bake. That's one thing to know. As all of those berries macerate in your sugar and liquid and so forth, they shrink down. So then we have that. Now we come in with the topping. And this we're just going to kind of add right on top. And I like to kind of keep it a little bit higher because as that butter melts, it's gonna, again, collapse down. So I'm gonna have a little pile on top of there, and then we're gonna put it into a 350-degree oven for about 20-25 minutes. You can test it and see if you've got a nice crisp on top. If it needs a little bit longer, put it in for another few minutes, but your berries and all that juice will be bubbling up the top and you'll have a crisp topping. So our brandy berry crisp is ready to come out of the oven. Let's take a look. Beautiful. And that's quite okay. That's what's going to bubble over and just kind of add to all of that flavor. However, we're going to take this off and plate it onto another plate when it cools off, and then we'll top dress with some of our fresh cut berries, just to give a little bit of fresh popness to all that rich cooked wonderfulness. So we're going to take it off of here and put it onto our plate make it look really nice when we present it. And be very careful, this is super hot. Offset spatula works really well. Wonderful, you can see nice little topping. This is where we can go in with some of those cut strawberries. And then I like to do the half blackberries, and then just maybe one little happy whole blackberry there. And there you have blackberry brandy crisp. So what we're doing here for our main entree today is we've got the marinated elk backstrap, but I'm doing a cauliflower and parsnip puree with coconut cream and a little decadent butter. You can use vegan butter if you want, but I'm using whole fat, regular cow's milk butter. And then I'm gonna finish it with some fresh chopped chives. Then I'm gonna do asparagus spears with a little lemon zest finished on top. We're gonna toss these with some olive oil and some Chef Shelly herb seasoning from Montana Flavor to Savor and really dress that up. So one thing I like to do is when I'm prepping my cauliflower, this is a perfect way that you can actually use some of that stem. I know a lot of times when you're using steamed cauliflower for a side dish and you just want to see the veg, you'll use just the florets. But because this puree, we want just a little bit more of the starchy elements, this is a perfect way to use a lot of your stems. So always be safe with your knife, but I will do just kind of a fine chop with my stems and add that to my florets for when I steam. And the thing with the parsnips, that's what the parsnips are doing for your cauliflower, is adding a little bit of starch, but way less than potatoes. So this is going to be one of those wonderful, lighter, leaner things, side dishes that you don't have so much heavy starch. And I also will add some garlic in there when I'm melting my butter. I'll put some garlic in there. Wonderful way to get rid of, to open up your bulb, is just to smash it with your hand. And a lot of times what I do is I make my own stock. So I will save a lot of my trim. Like I've got some of my shallot here, so I'll save that, and in the restaurant we call it trim. So we've got a trim bowl, some of my asparagus that I've trimmed off. When you break off that woody part, that is wonderful to go into your trim and be able to make your own vegetable stock, or you can add it to bones to roast off and make a beef broth. Or what I do, because I have my elk I will actually make elk stock. So I save my trim and make all kinds of wonderful things with it. And then just pound out some of that garlic, get that paper off, and trim off that tiny little edge. That dark little tip doesn't like to break down. So it doesn't take much, but just a little bit to take that edge off. This is one of my ends of the red onion. I'm just going to add that to my trim. I like to smash and then go back in and give yourself a real fine dice, because it'll bloom really good in that butter and make a wonderful flavor, aromatic for the cauliflower parsnip puree. Now we're going to get started actually making our first side, which is the cauliflower and parsnip puree. So you're basically just going to steam these. You don't have to steam them. You can cook them in a liquid. You can cook them in the liquid part of the coconut cream. You can do it in the liquid. You can do it in just water, or like I'm going to do is steaming it. But in the restaurant industry, we don't always have the right lid. So this is a little insider secret: tin foil. It works wonderful. My water is nice and steaming. Watch out, don't get burnt from that steam. I'm gonna put that in there. I've got a little ramekin in the water to hold that up. I'm just gonna tightly close that. Now, what I'm gonna do with my asparagus is I'm just gonna toss it with some olive oil. And then this is one of my wonderful things. I'm just gonna do it right here on the cutting board because it's nice and easy. Toss that with a little bit of olive oil. This is where my green lid comes in, because we're doing things that are green. Vegetables. My Chef Shelly herb seasoning. And I'm just gonna toss that with that. And then these are gonna go on a sheet pan or in a regular pan, whatever's gonna fit, and they will go right into the oven. And when they come out of the oven and they're ready, then I'll finish them with some of that fresh lemon zest. We're just gonna have to get our pan started. You want to have that kind of a feel your temperature. You're not going to have a lot of real heavy browning. We're just going to soften the vegetables, kind of liven them up, bring out some of those flavors. So I'm actually using a little olive oil in here. And then I'm going to get my shallots and red onion. And we're going to saute that up. After those bloom a little bit, then we'll add our garlic. And you always want to season each layer of cooking. That's one of the secrets of a chef. Each layer of cooking needs to be seasoned, because then you don't have to use so much seasoning. You can kind of hear that sizzling and see how they're starting to bloom. And that's what we're looking for, is just a little bit of a bloom on all of those so we can get some flavor. This is the beginning of a sauce. You're developing layers in a sauce. You start with your shallots and garlic is one of those first layering of sauce flavors. So we're going in with about 4 cloves of garlic. This is a pretty good seasoned marinade, and we've got a lot of meat there to kind of get that marinade into. So as that garlic just takes about 30 seconds to bloom, now what I want to do is I actually want to bloom some of that New Mexico chili powder. I just want to kind of get that blooming. Then we've got our Worcestershire. We can just kind of add everything in now. There's our tamari or soy sauce. If you don't have tamari, you can use soy sauce or coconut aminos. All of that works. Then we're going to go in with our brown sugar. Break that up. Oh, smells awesome. Then I'm just going to turn that down a little bit. We're going to go in with some of these Montana Flavor to Savor spices. In this recipe, I'm gonna do a combination of two. I've got my blackening seasoning, and then, because I want to kind of change, I'm not trying to make it be Cajun, I'm trying to make it be a little bit different. I'm going to add a teaspoon also of the salt-free seasoning. And that's got a lot of cardamom and coriander and all these extra little spices that just adds another layer to this wonderful marinade. And with wild game, with this elk, you really kind of need some flavor because it's such a lean protein. I'm going to go in with some of my lemon zest. Just get that to bloom. And like I said, we don't need to really reduce this. We're just going to get that, all those flavors blended together. And that's our marinade. Now we need to cool this off. I'm gonna go into the fridge with it for at least 10 minutes to kind of get that cooled off, and then we'll add it onto our elk. So we're gonna pop that asparagus in the oven. It'll only take about 10-15 minutes. Now our elk backstrap has been marinating wonderfully. We're going to take that out of there, and you're going to want to preserve as much of the marinade as you can, because we're going to actually put that back in the pan that we sauteed all of our veg with, and we're going to reduce it down and have a sauce. So there is your beautifully marinated backstrap. Here's my pan. We're going to put all of the wonderful shallots, everything back in. I know a chef that calls these rubber spatulas the $1 million spatulas, because in a restaurant, waste is, definitely don't want to lose all of those extra little bits, because waste is what hurts the restaurant. So I use my rubber spatula, got that all out of there, and now just because I'm going to sear this steak and I'm going to put it in the oven to finish, I do want to kind of dry off just a little bit. We're not trying to remove everything. We're just going to pat it a little bit because it just helps to get a nice sear on our meat. So just pat that. And then that is a room temperature. We did marinate for about 30 minutes in the fridge at least, but you can go longer. You can go up to an hour. Because it's not a high acid marinade, you can do a little bit longer. So we did that about 30 minutes, and you can see it's beautiful. Now let's go ahead, as our cauliflower is steaming there, let's go ahead and start to reduce that marinade back there. I'm just going to put it on medium-low for now. And what we're going to do is kind of get our cast iron pan hot for that sear. And that's one of those things that a quick sear in a hot pan with just a little bit of oil is what gives you that beautiful crust. But because it's a thicker meat and a leaner meat, we don't want to go too far because it'll dry out. So what we're going to do here now is I patted this dry. I'm just going to add some of my steak seasoning. This is the Bradley O steak seasoning, named after our restaurant. And I am just going to add some of that to there. Just enough to coat the bottom of our pan. Always presume things are hot. Cast iron pans are wonderful because they also add to that crust. They just hold their heat throughout the entire pan. A lot of times you can also just kind of take a peek. If it's lifting off, that's wonderful. If it doesn't have enough of a sear for me, I want it a little bit more. But you can also look at the side of the protein and kind of see as it starts to change colors, how far up. Now we're going to cook this to medium rare because that's the best way to cook game meat. And marinade in red meats and healthy meat like this is not a problem to take it from the fridge, or even like I did, I left this out for 30 minutes at room temperature as it marinated. It's perfectly safe because we're going to bring it to a boil. So when you're boiling that, you're killing any potential thing that could happen. And then it's just a wonderful way to add your little sauce. Now this looks like we're ready to turn that over. Yes, beautiful. Just a nice little crust. And then what I'm going to do now is just let that crust for a second, and then I'm going to finish it in the oven. I've got it at 350 degrees, and depending on your oven and how it's calibrated, this will probably take about 10 minutes. I'm going to kind of move this around. I've got my asparagus in the way. Pop this in there so I've got that right in the middle. And then see how that is boiling. Now it's just going to kind of reduce down. We're looking for a nice, when you drag your spoon across, you want that liquid to not fall back into your drag. So that's one of the things, secret ways you can tell when you're ready is when it's a little bit slower when that comes around. But you also want to be combining all of your ingredients back in. Manage your heat. Taken our meat out after we've seared it, and I've just let it rest. You cover it with some tinted foil and you just let it rest for a little bit, and then we're going to slice it and get it ready to plate. There's a beautiful, nice caramelization on there. It's got that beautiful little pink in the middle. We're good. So what we're doing now is just gonna puree our cauliflower and parsnips in with our melted butter and garlic in there with the coconut cream. We just want to get this to a nice, smooth consistency. So we're going to plate now. I've got my asparagus spears out of the oven. They got a beautiful caramelization on it. We're going to add our little bit of lemon zest to that because it just pops with any type of vegetables. Really works well. Then I'm going to plate with my parsnip puree. I did sauteed my garlic with some butter and some of that coconut cream, and then just blended it all up. Added some, tasted for salt and pepper seasoning. I'm going to do some chives right on top of there. And then let's plate our marinated, seared backstrap. And then the best part is going to be our sauce. So this again is just that wonderfully reduced marinade. And I'm just going to go right over the top like so and bring the whole dish together. A little bit more. And there you have it. Marinated backstrap, cauliflower parsnip puree on asparagus tips with lemon zest. So this is Shelly's Game Kitchen, and what we cooked for you today was elk backstrap marinated, and then that marinade was reduced down into a sauce with a cauliflower parsnip puree and asparagus spears with lemon zest. And you can find me on social media at chefshellymeyer.com, on Instagram and Facebook, both the same, Chef Shelly Meyer. And then our spices that we use today is Montana Flavor to Savor spices. There's 6 different blends. We use today the steak seasoning, we use the herb seasoning, and we use the seasoned salt. You can find out about these at www.mtflavortosavor.com.